Welcome to It's Not You, It's Grief, a safe space to have candid conversations surrounding the many faces of grief. How do you handle the process while moving forward and ultimately getting back to living in the moment? Come on this journey as we navigate grief through the art of storytelling. And now for your host, Ahira Smith.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of It's Not You, It's Grief. Today, I have a special guest with me. This lovely lady is just a delight. I have had the pleasure of knowing her for a few years, and interesting enough, we met online, part of a group that highlights people of color in the classical genre music. And when I saw a couple of her videos and her performances, I'm like, I want to know this woman right here because her voice just resonated with me so deeply. And so I had to bring her on my show because I wanted her to speak her story. I wanted her to tell her truth in terms of what it's been like on her journey, being that of a professional opera singer. And so before I formally introduce her, I just want to give a little short bio on where she is, what she's been through, and then I'm going to let her tell her story. So I would like to start off by just giving the bio. Miss Soprano Chantal Braziel is known for the beauty, passion, and magnitude of her voice. She infuses spirit and artistry in every performance, whether in art, song, or spirituals. Miss Braziel has coached with the international acclaimed soprano LaTonya Moore, and she was a participant in Angel Blues Opera Training Studio and performed in the masterclass with the international tenor, Mr. James Valenti, through Angel Blues Training Studio. Now, let me just stop right here and tell you, I have her bio in front of me, and let me tell you something, it's nothing short but beautiful. This thing is large and glorious. She has won the Special Mention Award in the Medici International Vocal Competition in 2021. She was a finalist in 2020 and 2022 with the Lyra New York International Vocal Competition and the Opera and Art Song oratorial sections of the American Prize Vocal Competition. She has been featured on numerous radio stations as guest performers. I mean, I'm trying to go through her vita right here because it's just so phenomenal. She has performed in the world premiere production of Omar, and she was a featured soloist as part of the Spoleto Festival USA. In 2020, she sang in the virtual performance of Handel's Messiah with the Jeremy Winston Choral International. She was the featured soloist with the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra in the Lift Every Voice concert at Heinz Hall, and returned in the ensemble of Lift Every Voice in October of 2022. In 2019, Miss Braziel made her Metropolitan Opera debut. Let me repeat that to you all. In 2019, Miss Braziel made her debut at the Metropolitan Opera House for the 2019 and 2020 Grammy Award-winning production of Gershwin's Porgy and Bess, and she performed in the chorus of the Jesse Norman's Memorial, which was also held at the Metropolitan Opera House. I'm so proud of her. I am so proud of her, and I'm so taken back. I mean, she has performed in the ensemble of the world premiere production of Pittsburgh Opera, The Summer King, The Story of Josh Gibson in 2017. And what's even more lovely is that she is a native of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and sings at various local performance venues in the area. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to please introduce and please welcome her, Miss Chantal Braziel. Hi, Chantal.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so, so much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for accepting my invitation. Again,
Absolutely.
we've talked about this offline, just in general about grief, because it does happen every day. It doesn't discriminate. But when I told you about my podcast and I shared it with you, I'm like, you know what? I want to invite you to come on and talk
Mhm.
about grief if you wouldn't mind. And then you're like, you know what? I definitely want to talk to you about this from my viewpoint and my experiences as a professional opera singer. And I'm like, come on with it. Because again, my father was an opera singer for a number of years, like close to 40 years, up until his passing. And I can't imagine what he went through in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. So here we are, fast forward to 2023. And I definitely want to have you on here to speak about your experiences and just kind of, tell your truth as far as what it's like to be a professional opera singer in a genre of music where there's not too many of us women of color in it, or we're not as many as some of the other genres like pop and R&B. So by all means, please share your story with us, sister girl. Go ahead.
Oh, girl, thank you so much again for having me. It's just an absolute blessing and a pleasure. So, I am a native of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And let me just say that as much as I love opera and I love doing it, it was never in the picture for me.
Mm.
I have been singing since I was a baby. As a matter of fact, I've been singing way before I could talk.
Mm.
As a matter of fact, my mother used to sing me lullabies, and I used to sing that same tune back to her. And that was when my family found out that I could really sing. And so growing up and knowing that my parents are pastors in the church, I literally grew up singing, was raised in the church. I grew up singing hymns, I grew up singing gospel. And when I was little, I always wanted to be the next gospel singer, the next Dottie Peoples, the next Yolanda Adams. I used to watch the gospel version of American Idol called Sunday Best, and I wanted to be on that because I loved the genre so much. Shoot, I wanted to be like Aretha Franklin, who had hits, who was and still is considered the queen of soul. That's the music that I actually grew up in. But there were some hints along the way that many people reminded me that I have a different kind of and special kind of voice. I grew up taking piano lessons, and that was when my piano teacher at the time found out that I could actually sing, as he found out that I had perfect pitch, meaning that whatever notes that was played on the piano, I instantly knew it, even without playing it. I instantly knew the sound. So he encouraged my family to put me in voice lessons at a later age, so that way my voice can develop. And so I grew up singing in church still. My old gospel choir director knew the type of voice that I was. He was the one that is still very much a great mentor to me to this day, is helping me throughout my career. But he was the one that told me that he heard my voice sing in such places as the Met. But I still wasn't convinced. I still didn't know what opera was, not until I went off to school at my undergrad at St. Vincent College. And that was when my former voice teacher introduced me to a whole new world of opera. She compared my voice similar to that of the great Black soprano Leontine Price. And at the time, I was like, who was that? And when she told me to look her up, as well as many other opera artists such as Jesse Norman, Kathleen Battle, Shirley Verrett, these were all Black opera singers. And when they opened their voices to sing, it was the most graceful, gorgeous sound that I ever heard. And I was stunned that someone who looked like me was actually doing it, actually did it. And so even though I researched, I still wasn't completely convinced I wanted to do opera because I was convinced to be this gospel singer. It wasn't until during my second year in college as a sophomore that I received recognition of my voice. Because I'm on social media quite often, I posted a concert of when I performed in a sacred oratorio concert. And that was when a lot of people who knew me, who I grew up with, singing with, told me that I was an opera singer. And so they told me that I was really good at it. And so I became more and more interested. And then that was when I knew that this was the path that God called me on. So through the ups and downs, and there are plenty of them, I would say this has been such a great, rewarding journey. To say that it has its challenges of grief is definitely an understatement. But looking back at everything that I've done and everything that is going for me, I don't regret any moment of it. There are times that I still doubt, but I grew even more and more in love with it. After I pursued my undergrad, I then went off to study at Carnegie Mellon University for my master's, where I continued working with my voice teacher, in which I still do. And that was when more doors opened up for me, not only just like in school, which was all great, but also in my hometown. People knew my face, people knew my name, people wanted to hear me more. And I also connected with a lot of Black emerging opera singers, some who are have already sung on the great stages, some who are teachers, just is a whole broad. I was so excited about connecting and networking because I'm networking with people that look like me and that are actual opera singers. That was when I connected with someone who was at the time a chorister at the Met. She told me to apply an audition for the Metropolitan Opera, and this was during my time of my studies in school. And so I went up to New York. I had a good audition, didn't hear back from them the first time, but then a few months later, God blessed me to hear back from them the second time, and that was when I got my start to sing in Porgy and Bess. That was in my favorite American opera of all. That was the first opera I learned about, was Porgy and Bess, because it was an opera of Black people, about Black people.
Yeah, yeah. It's listen, I'm hearing it, and your stories resonated with me. I love it. I love it because, again, just your journey. A lot of singers tend to start off in the church, just based off people's upbringing. And you said it, a lot of times you're singing gospel and, you're singing choral music, and then all of a sudden your voice is shaping up to where now it's transitioning into a whole nother genre that you weren't familiar with until you did some digging and some research. So, to where you started off, and even though you still had questions, I'm like, am I really good enough? Is this really what I want to do? I'm not too sure, but the more encouragement you heard, and the more you, not just from that of your voice teacher, but that of other people in the community, was able to still encourage you while you were still having moments of doubt, that speaks volumes in itself, because you had to support that regardless of what was going to happen, you still had a support system in place. So that's what I like to hear. Tell me the first time you had a rejection. What, if you remember, if you can recall, what was the first time you ever had a rejection in terms of the professional sector? And what was that like for you, if you can recall?
I think the first time I had a rejection was when I was in school, because my teacher told me in order to get more experience and exposure, she suggested that I look into competitions. So I started doing that. And so even though that was my first competition, I was a little upset, but as expected. And I auditioned for the Westchester competition, or vocal competition in Westchester. And I thought at the time, I was only 19, 20 years old, and my voice was still developing. I thought I did good. I thought I actually rocked it. As a matter of fact, the coach or pianist there really thought that I was good. But when I didn't win that competition, I was pretty bummed out. But I also had to realize that this was my first time doing something in opera. And so, as expected, I'm going to have these rejections in any and every audition. But that didn't mean that I felt pretty bummed about it. And then I did a second competition that mentioned African-American singers. I thought that I did my best, or I was nervous, but even still, I thought I did good. And that was a sting right there. So this was during like my sophomore, junior year that I auditioned for these competitions. And it hurt when you were in the room, you were expecting to get a prize, even if it wasn't first place. It was hard. But then it helped me become a stronger and better singer because of it. But that doesn't mean that at the time it didn't hurt. So that's what I remember.
Okay. So when you experience these types of rejections, how did you handle it? Did you sit in it? Did you process it? Did you be like, okay, on to the next one? Did you kind of replay, what did I do wrong? Or, did you have somebody there to kind of record you and be like, okay, this is the note how did you handle the rejection? Because again, rejections, it happens, but again, when a person is being rejected by a gift, in my opinion, like your voice is a gift from that of the powers that be. Here it is, you've come from a place where I'm not really sure if this is something I want to do. This wasn't something like, I want to be an opera singer from the giddy up. You were already set in your mind, I want to be a gospel singer like Aretha Franklin. And then talking to people, listening to people's words of encouragement, you're like, hey, you need to go in this genre. And now you're like, okay, I'm in this genre. I didn't want to be in this genre, but apparently my voice is pulling me in this genre. And now I'm here at these competitions and I'm not making it. I'm like, well, here's another one, and I'm not making it, or I'm a second place, or third, or and it's like, well, darn, I didn't want to do this to begin with, and I'm getting all these rejections. How did you handle the grief that was associated with those rejections? Like, did you have anything in play? Did you listen to music? Did your mentor, like, what was it?
I would say, first of all, when it comes to any rejection or things that you want to do, it's important to find people who support you. And so, because I know that I come from a family of faith, especially mentors that come from that same faith, I look to them. I sat in it, but I didn't stay in it. I had to pick myself up, but at the same time, it's okay to feel it. And it's also okay to lean to people who really care about you, who really want you to succeed, and listen to them. And also take their suggestions on studying the singers who too got rejected. You weren't the only one, and you definitely won't be the last. This won't be the last time that you will get a rejection, but the most important thing is how you pick yourself back up. But I couldn't lie to you, because this was my first time doing opera, period. And it was not even in the works for me to do it, but my voice and everybody was calling me to do it. It was discouraging, because here I was trying to do my best to get sing and be heard, and my best wasn't good enough. And so I listened to music. I listened and read other people's experience, and I listened to their advice on how to not dwell and to keep going. I guess I wasn't really taught to just stay there and be disappointed. and feel that moment. I was taught to always keep going. So that way you don't stay in it. So that way it doesn't control you. So, but for me personally, I'm a sensitive person, and whatever hurts is going to hurt bad for me. And at the time, my 21-year-old self, I was hurt because this was my first competition at Sting, but it was okay. It was my first. I wasn't expecting it. I was happy that I did it. But my second, I was expecting something and I didn't get it. And I was disappointed, very. And so I leaned to that.
And so looking back, you clearly are able to articulate the fact that this hurts. I don't like this. What did I do? I should be back with Aretha Franklin and Shirley Caesar and all of them and singing, "Take me, Jesus," you know.
Yes.
You know, so I get that. I appreciate your transparency, because some people be like, oh, just keep your head up, which is important. Keep your head up and just keep going. Be like, no, I sat in it. Let's be clear. I sat in it.
Important.
But I was able to get up because my legs were getting numb. I couldn't sit no more. I had to stand up and I had to keep walking. So I respect that. Something you mentioned, though, that I don't hear too many people talk about when it comes to grief, that especially because we're talking about in the professional world of music or artistry, that you started to form bonds with other people who were in that same predicament, people who had also been rejected because of this, that, and the other. If you wouldn't mind sharing a story or so on like a poignant moment where you're like, oh, you got rejected too, like we should talk, or what was that like?
It made me feel, just connecting with other people, not even just like Black opera singers, but just opera singers in general. It felt good because, first of all, as an opera singer, you have to connect with other people. You're going to eventually and hopefully be working with other people. And it's okay to share that same sentiment, because it made me feel like I wasn't alone in this. I wasn't the first opera singer to be rejected, nor will I be the last one, but it just feels good to share the same feelings with another colleague who is on your level, or if not a different level, but is still going through the same rejection, even if they are ahead of you. I think everybody goes through rejection. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't even have to be music or opera. Anybody, if you don't get the job, you get rejected. If you don't get the promotion that you want, you get rejected. It happens, but knowing that I was an opera singer and I was, at the time, this was my first time doing this, and connecting with other singers who are still going through that, it makes me feel like I'm not in this by myself. They're going through the same thing, apparently. And it's okay to feel this way. It's okay to share that, as long as they have good intentions, because even when you do get rejected, even when you deal with that, you can't share that with everybody. You just can't. When it comes to grief and rejection, it's okay to have support, find your village, but also be careful. Be careful.
Yeah, I've heard that. And again, I've witnessed it before with my dad, just, looking at my dad and how he had gone through his different auditions as well. Because again, you'll have people there who be like, oh, tough break, this, that, and the other. And then they'll be slick behind your back and be like, oh, that person shouldn't have said that, or who he think he is, or who she thinks she is, and she must think she's a diva, a divo. And I'll just be like, shut up, you in the same boat too. But
exactly.
you have the crabs in the barrel mentality, and it's like, that in itself is grief, because like you said, you can't share that with everybody. If the energy is present and it's on the up and up, we're like, look, we in this together. Hey, let's go get some coffee or tea or something, and let's talk about it and what we're going to do and root each other, as opposed to like, oh, better luck next time. And be like,
Exactly.
Anyway, so and again, that's artistry. That's a lot of places, but I see it so evidently when it comes to the world of art. And that's unfortunate because to me, whether it's music, whether it's acting, whether it's painting, sculptures, dancing, it's a way to express yourself. It's a way to let go of what you may be dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And then, when you're trying to break through that grief, or when you're trying to not deal with that, the state of mind of depression coming in, and you got people who are just malicious about that too can be impactful on what you're expressing. So that's wow. Okay. So another question that I have with your transition from that of the gospel world to that of opera, because I'm sure you had mentors. I'm sure you had a good number of people in the gospel world as well. Did you feel that in the gospel world they were able to express their grief and disappointment openly, or did you feel that was more behind closed doors because of the fact that it's because the genre of music is that of a spiritual faith base, and it was more like, okay, just take it to the church, take it to the altar and leave it there, as opposed to where here you have that luxury of that freedom, be able to do this or do that. But when it comes to that secular world, and versus the sacral, or the spiritual world, you got to be more don't show it. Did you notice how the two, I don't know if I'm explaining it correctly. I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're good.
But yeah, so do you feel that people who are in the genre of gospel and in hymn world, do you feel that they're able to express their grief more openly, or is it more behind closed doors versus being out in the secular world?
Well, I don't really know how a lot of professional gospel singers handle their grief, because they come back from the Christian gospel faith. They hold on to their faith. And so I am going to guess that they use prayer and seeking God as a way to deal with that rejection. And I'm glad that that was mentioned, because I too, even if when I'm an opera singer, I'm still using the faith that I have been raised in this secular world of opera, because that is one of the best ways that that's going to keep me from staying in that rejection. So, and just like anything, the gospel industry is also a business. They don't just hold on to their faith, but they too probably go through the same, if not the similar version of what opera singers do, because I'm sure that there are a lot of young gospel singers that are trying to get their foot in the door and be the next version of somebody, and it's not easy, and they have to continue holding on to their faith. They have to continue singing God's praises, and I'm learning to do that same exact thing. It's just an opera.
Right.
I still have to hold on to that faith that God is going to open that door that only He wants me to be in opera, because it's hard. And that's why I really have to hold on to that faith to keep me from being discouraged. But to say that it's easy, it's not. It's far from it. Anything worth having, anything you want to do is not easy to get.
That's true. That's very true. Okay, so if you don't mind, how long would you identify yourself as being a professional opera singer, if you don't mind me asking? How many years?
I would say between 4 to 5 years, because I spent the majority of my time in school.
Okay.
I didn't really focus on that. I became professional when I sang for the Pittsburgh Opera and the Mets. So I would say about between 3 to 5 years.
Okay. Looking back to when you first started to now, how do you feel you handle grief?
I feel like I've handled grief Um, actually,
Is it similar in a similar fashion, or have you incorporated things to lessen the blow, I should say, or you know what I mean? It's you know, for an example, somebody who was young may, you know, be like, I'm gonna go work out. And you know, hit a punching bag. 5 years later, I'm in a zenful place right now. I'm doing yoga. I'm calmer.
I'm gonna be honest.
Okay.
I'm not surprised when it comes to grief.
Okay.
When I don't get what I want,
Mhm.
I try not to be surprised. It's disappointing,
Mhm.
but where several years where I thought that I was going to have first or second place in that competition, and I was so excited. I'm not as excited as I used to be, because now I realize that this is a never-ending game. And so it's kind of similar, because even when you're not shocked and you don't get it, it still hurts. It's still frustrating when you don't get that back-to-back gig that you want. But it's not like I am fully excited. I know I'm gonna get the part. I'm like, okay, I've done this before. It's not even a shocking thing anymore. So I think when I first started, I was excited about doing this. And now that I've actually done it for several years, I know I'm still knowing the ball game of it all. And so I'm not as excited or shocked as I was before. So that way, once I didn't get it, I was kind of down in the dumps. Now, like I said, it still hurts when you have back-to-back things. Like, if it was one rejection that I got today, that was fine. But if I got the same rejection the next day and the next day, now that gets to me. Okay. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Why am I not wanted? Why am I not appreciated? Why am I not doing enough? What can I do? Okay. But yeah.
So mentioning the fact that, you know, you've been in competitions where you didn't get placed, or you know, you didn't, you know, you got overlooked. Have you gone back to those competitions again, or have you just kind of been like, okay, I did this competition out in San Francisco, I didn't get it, I'll do it again next year, or be like, you know what, forget San Francisco, let me go to San Diego. You know, do you go back?
I did once, a couple of times. Like, one of the auditions I did was here in Pittsburgh. It was called the Pittsburgh Concert Society. I did that once, got rejected, and I did that for one more year, and I still got rejected. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to get that. Moving on to the next one. If I do it more than once, fine. But if I do it like more than 2 times, I'm moving on.
Okay.
Enough is enough. It's time to move on. I'm not going to get that gig. I just have to accept that.
Okay. When you are dealing with grief, and you can look at this from the standpoint of as a professional, do you feel you have a tendency to suppress it? Do you try to get over it, or do you try to get around it, or are you more likely inclined to go through it?
Suppress it and go through it. I think it's important, because you can't stop the sting. Okay. You get through it, of course, but no one really talks about how it feels, how it hurts. Okay. You know how on social media, for example, people like you because of the good things you post and the accomplishments you've made. But what if there are not so good accomplishments? What if you go through these grief stages like this? And I suppress it. I go through it. I think it's important not to skip that. Admit that you're upset. Right. Of course, don't stay in it. But for me, as a sensitive person, I can't just ignore it. I don't want to just ignore it, because that at the time it meant a lot to me. I worked hard for it. This was something I really wanted to do. And not getting it, it's sad. And it's the same thing over and over again. Like, it makes you question, why am I not good enough? So at the time, grief also means you're human. It's okay to feel this. It's okay. Don't try to hide it.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to hide my feelings. I'm not just going to tell people the great things about me.
Mhm.
I'm going to tell that this hurts too.
Mm.
No one really talks about the rejections
Mm.
when it comes to opera. No one talks about that. They
Mm.
talk about the accomplishments, of course. They talk about things coming up, and that's all fine and dandy.
Mhm.
But that's what I also noticed. No one really talks about the negative parts.
Mm.
And it's important to go through it. It's important to recognize the emotions, just like grief outside of music. You got to,
Yeah.
or it's
Absolutely.
going to kill you inside.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I know, I don't know if it was last year or maybe I think it was like towards the end of last year. There is a professional opera singer that you and I are fully aware of. I won't mention her name right now. But she posted something on social media about a particular role that she was, she was all set to play. But then after she spoke with the creative director and they wanted her to do something, she said, I have to respectfully decline this because it was not something that resonated with me to do. And I remember social media just took off with that in terms of like, well, how could you do that? This is a great opportunity for you being a woman of color. This is how the opera has always been dealt with, and this, that, and the other. And on the flip side, people are like, kudos to you. You stand up for your principle. This is what you are about. We need more young people to speak about it. I say all that because social media is a beast. And as you just mentioned, when they like you, oh, it's the world. They will clap for you, they'll give you kudos, thumbs up, and everything. But as soon as something goes against the norm, they will attack you and they will start dragging you down. And I'm just curious, have you ever been in the situation with social media where people have attacked your gift? And if you did encounter that, how did you process it? How did you go through that? Or if you're still going through that? And what is it that why is social media so vital when it comes to people's journeys, and especially in the professional world of actors and actresses and music and all that stuff?
I think to answer that question, because at the time, like growing up, like 90s, early 2000, no one had that.
Mm-hmm.
No one. Facebook is full of public people,
Mm-hmm.
people that you can interact with, people that you can network with. Facebook, especially to the opera world, can now be like your audition that opera companies that now have Facebook can look at you.
Right.
And so that's why they use Facebook. I personally use Facebook as a tool to get likes, to get more attention, to connect with other people, to get my name out there, to post videos. And speaking of videos, there was a time that and it was kind of funny that I got attacked on Facebook.
Wow.
And it was when I was singing one of my videos during the time where I just posted all of my singing videos during quarantine because I had nothing else to do. So why not? And someone who was non-opera related, just a random person, apparently didn't like it and posted that to bully me. It was, I didn't know who this person was, but apparently she did not like what she heard. And it was probably because she did not know opera. And I'm like, okay. And so there was nothing to do because I didn't know this person. Will not speak to people I rarely know.
Mhm.
And so I just blocked this person.
Mhm. Wow. Well, I'm sorry you went through that because, you know, cyberbullying is real, and it's so cruel. And like you were right, growing up in the in the 80s and 90s and even part of 2000, you know, we didn't have social media, you know, not to the platform that we have right now. So,
Mhm.
you know, to me, it's just the fact that it does help you get a stronger, it helps build your resilience. I'll tell you
Mhm.
that much, because again, for you to encounter such remarks about your gift from people you don't even know, like you said, you use the platform to promote yourself. And again, opera companies, San Francisco, Houston, the Met, they're looking at like, oh, well, let's bring her, or let's invite her for an audition, or let's let her come to the summer
Mhm.
festival, this, that, and the other. And then you got those one or two people be like, oh, your voice sucks, or
Yeah.
who told you can sing? You like, I was just singing I was just singing hallelujah, and somebody's chastising me for
Pretty
saying
much.
hallelujah. I'm hitting high notes and everything, and you're saying, oh, this is cracking. So, you know, I mean, again, I commend all artistry who are able to put themselves out there like that, and to keep, you know, hitting that pavement or knocking on those doors, you know, regardless if you know the rejections on the other side or not. And in fact, you can't go in there thinking like, I'm going to be rejected. Otherwise, you'll never knock the door. You'll never hit the pavement, you know. And just to understand that with that rejection can come with grief. But
Mhm.
if you are self-aware as to who you are and understand that this is just part of the journey in mastering your craft, then like you said, it won't sting as much, but you do know how to navigate through the minefields.
Mm.
So with that, I appreciate you sharing. And so I'm really happy you're on here. I just got two more questions, and then again I'm going to let you go because I'm so appreciative, and I'm learning so
Mm.
much about you. And even though when you're posting your videos and I'm hearing your voice, I'm like, oh, she's singing it. Go ahead, girl. Let me get my tissue and everything. So I love it. So what I wanted to ask you in terms of grief for you on a personal level, outside of your profession,
Mhm.
um, do you feel more, let's see, what's the best way can I ask this question? Do you, because of the nature of grief, because there are different types of grief. We're talking about grief in that a professional world versus grief of somebody whose health might be declining, or that of somebody who's no longer with us. Do you feel you handle the grief differently because it's of a personal nature of a loved one, or, you know, breaking? Do you feel the grief, the way you handle grief is different from that of a professional, of Miss Chantal Braziel, versus that of your cousin, the name your cousins give you? How does that resonate with you?
Oh yeah. When
Okay.
you lose when you lose someone you love, it has nothing to do with your business.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I keep my privacy life and my professional life very separately. There's a whole difference when I grieve over not so great a performance, not getting things I want to someone I love.
Mm-hmm.
When you lose someone you love, it's a personal level. And as a matter of fact, I'm going through that right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, but one of my best friends passed away within not even just, it hasn't even been a year yet. It's been
Wow.
several months. So
Sorry.
this grief is still very much fresh. I have to deal with grief even through my business, because this person had always been in my life,
Mm-hmm.
and it hit hard. It's still hitting hard that she is gone.
Mm.
Her, and one grief that also was really hurtful was losing my grandmother.
Mm.
This happened several years ago, and just because I don't talk about it doesn't mean that I still don't feel it. So these are my grandmother and my best friend are the two main griefs that I'm still going through, because those two are dear to my heart. My grandmother was literally my first voice teacher, because I got my voice from her. When she was young, she used to sing.
Wow.
Of course, she was my grandmother. She was the mother of my church.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember she had me sing gospel songs like Kirk Franklin, He's Able, and hymns like Great is Thy Faithfulness, or How Great Thou Art, that she used to love to sing. Everything that I'm doing now is because of her. She gave me the voice. And in a way, everything I'm doing now through opera, I'm pursuing her dream. Because when she was younger, she used to have a beautiful, beautiful operatic voice. I believe my father, my grandmother, my dad's mom, told me that she once had a scholarship to go to school just to sing. But at the time, she was young, she was raising a family, and she wasn't able to do it for whatever reason. And every time he reminds me, I'm not only living my dream, I'm living hers, because she wanted to do the exact same things I'm doing. Yes, so it hurt. It hurt when I lost her. This person is a huge part of the reason why I'm continuing to do it, so that way I can live our dream for the both of us. And my best friend was just there the entire time. She had dreams. And one thing I've learned about my best friend is that she was sickly, and that's how she died. She fought. She persevered. No matter what, she still lived her life. And in a way, she's still teaching me how to persevere. So through that grief, I have to persevere. Because of her, I have to keep going. Because of my grandmother, I have to keep going. But it's definitely, make no mistake, it is a different kind of hurt. And it's okay. It is okay. I don't think you should combine the two.
Okay.
As much as opera is a huge part of who I am, it's not all of me. I have to remember how I started, and who believed in me and who supported me. My grandmother did. My best friend supported me. And I have to believe, I know that they're looking down at me, saying how proud of me they are, but it's a huge sting. Truly is a huge sting every day that I have to deal with this grief. Because it's so fresh and it just happened, it's still hard to believe that my best friend of 14 years is gone. Even after all this time, my grandmother died in 2014, it's still hard to believe that she is gone. I mean, like, I've learned how to deal with that, but there are some things I just never thought would happen, or happen so soon. But whatever the reason, God has his plans. He works in ways that I don't understand, and I have to trust that. And that's why I have to hold on. Going back to that, I got to hold on to that faith that I learned in the gospel world, in my church. It's in here, because that's going to help you get through. You got to look at the word, and you have to think of your loved ones that you lost, what they would have wanted you to do. And it's so ironic that the week that I lost my best friend last year was that same week that I had to travel to one of my other performances in Berlin, Germany. I literally left the day after her memorial. And it's kind of sad that I don't just have the time to sit down and grieve after it happens. When my grandmother died, I was still in college. I was actually about to graduate. I was going into my senior year in college, and I had to go back right after her funeral. I had to go back to school right after her funeral. After my best friend died, I had to go right back to performing. So I never had the time. But that doesn't mean that the hurt wasn't there. It truly was. And you have to separate the two. I think it's so healthy. I may not be a grief counselor, but I think it's completely normal and it's completely healthy to separate different kind of grief. It's a personal level. I wouldn't say it's the same, because as much as I love to sing, I can get through that rejection of not getting that performance. But the loss of my loved ones, such as my grandmother, such as my best friend, and other people who've gone before me, I still have to live with. I still have to take that no matter where I go, performing or not. So, yeah.
Well, first of all, my condolences to you on the loss of your grandmother and your best friend.
Thank you.
Grief, it sucks. let's just keep it 100.
It sucks.
It sucks, and you know, it's unfortunately it's inevitable in terms of death. We all are going to go on that, make that transformation.
And grief
day.
And grief comes at you at the most unexpected times.
Listen,
it does.
It does. I look, I can tell you right now, I'm one of those type of people where I don't want to know. But even, even when even when you hear doctors sitting there saying, oh, they got this much long to live, I still don't want to know, because even when you hear it, you're still never ready.
Exactly.
You are never prepared. You just mentioned, you just shared this beautiful story about your friend who had been ill for a very long time. And though she might have had conversations with you on what she wanted, this, that, and the other, and at that moment, you're in the moment, you're like, well, let's focus on this, girl. Let's get some ice cream. Let's go eat. Let's do some shopping. You ain't thinking about none of that. And even though she's already told you, or your grandmother already told you, or anybody told you what they wanted, when it hits you, you still ain't ready for that.
When it hits you, it hits you.
It hits you. And all of that goes out the window because there's no preparation for it. So, I appreciate you sharing your testimony and your truth about the differences of grief that you have encountered from a professional standpoint and as well as personal, because it is different.
It is.
The way you'll handle it is something completely different than maybe one of your other colleagues, or we just handle it differently, and there's no blueprint to this. And I think people need to understand that even though we sit in it, or we may go through it, we got to still be able to talk about it, because unfortunately we live in a society where they're like, oh, okay, well, like you said, you just finished burying your sister friend, and then you took off into a plane going to Berlin.
Literally. As a matter of fact, I sang at both of their funerals.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Imagine how difficult.
Listen.
I sung at my grandmother's funeral because I knew that was what she wanted me to do. And when my friend's parents asked me to sing at her memorial, I'm like, oh, Jesus.
Listen, I look, I get that. I do, because when my grandmother had passed away and she told me she wanted me to sing, I'm like, Eyes on the Sparrow, and I had a hard time getting through it, and my voice is nowhere near to the level of yours. And my father, who was still with us, he helped chime in and everything, but like you said, that's what they wanted, and that's what you did.
Yeah.
And then
I literally sung.
Wow. Yeah.
One of my favorite hymns, or my grandmother's favorite hymns that she used to have me sing, was Blessed Assurance.
Yes.
And
right
I cannot go through that song without thinking of her.
Listen.
I cannot.
Look, I get it, because it took me years. It took me years to get over his Eyes on the Sparrow. You couldn't tell me for any time I heard that song, boop, boop, I was in a different place. So I understand. And trust me, you continue to feel it, because one thing, as I'm learning, going through this journey, and you're going through this journey, we grieve because we love. These are people you loved with all of your heart.
I still do.
There is a song that is so deeply that resonates with me. And another professional colleague of yours, she sung at my father's funeral. And she did such a beautiful job. She was my father's last voice student and everything. And she knocked it out of the park. I don't know how she got through it, but she did. And as soon as the service was over, she took right off because she had to go back. And when I tell you, when I see the video footage of that, I'm still brought to tears because I'm like, you are a bad woman in a good way to be able to do that. Because I would have been like, Lord, I would
Definitely.
I would have been done. But that just shows the strength that has been bestowed upon you through that of your grandmother and that of your best friend and all that the spirit angels have given you to be able to do that. And even though you may not have that break to grieve, you still take your breaks when you need to. Don't I want people to understand that. Don't sit there and keep going, because you have to let it out. You have to express it, because I'm telling you, grief can be very painful in more ways than people want to admit. That stuff can impact you physically to where you are going to have people grieving over you if you don't face it and let it out. So,
and I don't think there is an order. They say that there is an order in grief, and I don't really think so, because
that's a lie.
I have felt like a combination of shock. I felt confused. I was angry. Like when I lost my best friend, I kind of knew that this was going to happen, eventually happen, but I never think about it because that's my best friend. I love her so much. I thought that she was always going to be there, but I just knew how sick. I knew my girl was sick, but through it all, she fought. Through everything that she had gone through, sickly. She's been sick. She was a baby. She had to go through kidney failure.
Oh, wow.
She fought and fought and fought, that I thought that she was going to continue fighting until she got tired. So deep in my heart, I knew that I was going to lose her, but I could have lost her a long time ago. And I felt a mixture of emotions. I always worried about her. I always checked up on her. She was literally, I've had more than one best friend, but she was literally, out of all the friends I've had, she was close. She was the closest. And so we talked almost every day until like she got tired. She didn't talk as much. Didn't see her as often. And I knew that she was tired. I just didn't want to admit that. And when I lost her, I felt a mixture of everything. I felt angry that God made her sick the entire time. I felt confused. I tried to accept it. I tried to even ignore it. I didn't want to go through it, but here I am. I didn't want to go through it. And you're right to say that grieve anywhere, because even after I went away, during the times that I was away or had to go back to school, I stayed there and I grieved. I cried where I was.
It's important. It's important. And honestly, when people, those stages of grief, what I've done is that I've looked at that stuff many times, and you look at the acceptance and denial and all this other stuff. And I'm like, you know what, this is the type of thing where you put in front of a 2-year-old and give them a crayon and just have them draw all over it. And I'm like, when they're done drawing it, that's how everybody feels when it comes to, it's not like I'm going to be a fear and I'm going to be an acceptance and denial. No, it's all over the place. And guess what? You're going back. It's a roller coaster ride. And guess what? It's still happening.
As a matter of fact, it's still happening for me. Like, since everything is fresh, like I said, it hasn't been a year since my best friend passed. And there are times at most random places, even when I'm like times that I'm alone in the house or in the room, I just think about it and I cry. She's really gone.
And that's okay. That is okay. And people need to understand that that's okay. Because what I don't like when people are in that state of mind of grieving, I'm like, oh, you just got to get over it. No, you
Please
need to
don't.
stay the heck away from me before I
Stay.
say something
Don't
that's
talk to
out of
me.
my faith, and then we all gonna be in trouble. Because
That's
trust and
one
believe,
thing.
those are the type of people you need to stay away from. I'm like, oh well, she fought a good fight. You know what? Once
I
again,
understand
I
that.
need you to. I hear you, but I don't need to hear that.
Thank you. I understand it. And some people say those things because they don't
They
know
don't know
what to
what
say.
to
Okay,
say.
it's okay not to say anything at all because I don't need
Right.
to hear that right now.
Just be silent. You know, it's like
Just be
it's
silent.
that
Just let me.
old saying, if you ain't got nothing nice to say, shut up.
And like, I understand you're trying to be helpful, but when it comes to grief, you're not helpful. You're
No.
gonna hurt.
Yes, yes.
You're gonna hurt.
And I think it's understand and I think people need to understand that it's okay
It
to
is.
hurt. It's okay to feel because
Thank
we
you.
try to suppress it, but you know, I'm hoping and my prayer for this podcast and just talking with you and others, because it's helping me as well, is to be able to learn to move forward with it and get back to living in the moment. That's all. That's honestly what it is. It's just moving forward with it. It never stops at your age of 30. It doesn't matter if it's been 10 years since Grandpa Joe passed. As long as you're able to move forward with it, because a birthday is going to come up, a scent is going to come up, you're going to hear a song, things are going to resonate with you. You're going to have that moment and be like, my God, and smile before the tear come down. It's part of the journey of us living in this life.
Exactly. Like, for example, my best friend's favorite group was the female group TLC.
Hello.
Every time I listen to them, every time
Crazy,
like,
sexy, cool.
No Scrubs. Every time that song comes up, I think of her because she loved that group. Was a fan for years.
Were you chilly? Were you chilly? Were you chilly? Was she T-Boz or left eye?
She was left eye.
She was left eye. Okay, so were you chilly?
You know, and I don't even know.
Because Chili could sing. I like Chili could sing those little high runs and all that stuff. So I'm thinking you were probably Chili.
I have no idea. Either that or T-Boz.
T-Boz is the other one. T-Boz had more of an alto bass.
Okay.
So that's why I'm thinking Chili, because she was more the mezzo. She would probably be of the mezzo, but T-Boz was more alto.
Yeah, but my girl, she was left eye because she was left eye. Left eye was pretty. She was young because of her eyes. Right. I think I was more so Chilly, but even like listening to her, I'm gonna think when I listen to TLC or Aaliyah, she loved Aaliyah. I'm gonna think of her. Her favorite male, her favorite crush for years was Usher. So I'm gonna think of her every time Usher comes on.
Ain't nothing wrong with My Way with Usher. Ain't nothing wrong with My Way with Usher. That's all right. That's all right. Go ahead, Usher. Go ahead. Go ahead, young man. Go
Usher's
ahead.
Still my baby.
You know what? We gotta talk offline about that. That's all right. Usher doing Usher in Vegas. Usher in Vegas, but we'll talk about that. But no. But you know what? In all honesty, though, sis, seriously, I thank you so much for coming on here and just showing your authenticity. That I love it. Thank you for sharing your stories with us and the truth, because again, it's helped me even as I'm processing all this, listening to this from the standpoint of you being in the professional singing world. It reminds me of my dad, and you know, I love it. You know, just reminiscing and just hearing how you have been handling it on a personal side with those that you love. Because again, you're not in it by yourself. I just want you to continue to understand that you definitely can call up on me. We can talk and Facebook, and if you need to, but you don't have to grieve by yourself, sis. There are a lot of us out there that we can have each other's backs. If you know, empathy goes a long way. So please know and understand that you got me, and I'll be checking up on you too. But one last thing before I let you go, please share with my family, my podcast family here, what you have coming up, any type of engagements. Just let me know so we can support you.
Oh, definitely. So I do have some exciting things coming up here in Pittsburgh, as I am a Pittsburgh native and I do a lot of performances around here. I will be singing with a brass band group called the River City Brass Band, and it is a great group full of trumpet players. It's similar to an orchestra, but only like trumpets and horns. And they are going to be doing the Porgy and Bess Rhapsody in Blue concert series in May, that they have asked me to sing some selections from Porgy and Bess.
Congrats.
And so thank you. I just had a rehearsal with them. That is going to be in May. On June 29th, I'm going to be singing for the Pittsburgh Pirates, which is our baseball league here at PNC Park. And then even more exciting news, as I will be traveling to Graz, Austria this summer from July 3rd to August 13th to participate in the training program of American Institute of Musical Studies. And it is a great and prestigious program to be in. I am still trying to raise funds to get there. So if anybody would like to donate or just fund in any way, it is so, so greatly appreciated. But I'm very excited about going. Well, this will be my second time going to Europe.
Awesome. Well, I'll definitely put that information on my podcast page, as well as on my Facebook page, so people can continue to support you in all of your future endeavors. I'm so proud of you. Again, there was a reason why we were able to connect a few years ago. And again, the fact that you were in the recent production of the Mets Porgy and Bess, and I saw you, and I'm like, I'm going to be in town. And I think I told you, like, within 48 hours, I'm like, I'm like, okay. And then one of the other people were like, okay, we're going to get her backstage. I'm like, oh, I'm going to see her. And so for us, being able to connect each other backstage and get in the pictures, I just loved it. I loved it. So again, all the best to you. Thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. We're talking about a very personable and a sensitive subject like this, but I do feel your story will help a lot of people who listen to it. So I thank you again so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. And, again, just to let everybody know on this podcast, thank you so much. Again, it's not you, it's grief. We're all in this together. We need to have more of these conversations. So, please, if you don't do anything else, but you feel like it resonates with you deeply enough, make sure you talk to your family. And if you feel like you need to talk to people outside on a professional level, please do so. Nevertheless, though, I hope everybody takes care of themselves. Be well, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye.
Thank you for listening, being intentional, and sharing this moment with us. We at It's Not You, It's Grief deeply understand the many facets of grieving, and we want to make sure we can be here for you. Again, thank you for listening, and tune in again wherever you subscribe to podcasts. We look forward to seeing you next time. Be well.